I am the Decay Echo, and this is your invitation to witness the unfolding of a narrative that refuses to fade into the silence of oblivion, a narrative as eternal as the whispers of decay. Let the journey begin, and may your curiosity be as relentless as the march of time. Now traveler, let's venture onward to discover myths, legends, facts and forgotten history.
Black Bartelmy, real story or just another ghost story? Black Bartelmy was an evil, surly buccaneer who murdered his wife and children and went to sea with a band of pirates as nasty as he. He roamed the Atlantic coast, murdering and pillaging and laying waste to the countryside as he passed. By the time he approached Cape Fortune in Nova Scotia, Black Bartelmy had a ship loaded with treasure. 500 chests had he full of gold and jewels and goblets and mighty swords. A thick Fundy fog lay over the bay as the ship approached, and the treacherous Fundy tide soon took hold of the evil man's ship. The crashing, churning waters of the Roaring Bull, that dangerous ledge of rocks near Cape Fortune, took the pirate's ship and smashed its hull. But Captain Bartlemy spotted land to the starboard side of the ship. He and his trusted mate Ben the Hook had the crew load up the escape boat with every treasure chest they could fit. Then the bold pirate had his first mate murder the other buccaneers so they would not have to share the treasure with them. Ben the Hook crouched just out of sight in the rocking escape boat and slit each man's throat with his hook as the seaman bent to place his burden in the hold. Then Ben threw each body over the side of the ship into the churning waters below so that the next pirate would not sense a trap when he came forward with his treasure. When the treasure was loaded into the boat, Bartlemy and Ben the Hook rowed into the calmer waters of the Cape. They searched for a place to bury their treasure. Finding a large cave, they piled each chest inside and then covered the entrance with rocks. As Ben the Hook rolled the last boulder into place, Bartlemy thrust a sword deep into his chest, twisting it with an evil laugh, and watched as his mate fell dead at his feet. Knowing that he had to leave this remote spot or starve, the evil pirate captain walked along the edge of the water, searching for a town or a harbor where he might row the escape boat. But Black Bartelmy soon found himself mired in quicksand with no one to save him. Only the gulls heard his dying curses ringing over the cape as he sank down and down into the mire and was engulfed. One stormy night soon after the pirate's death, the keeper of the local lighthouse saw a flare going up in the direction of the Roaring Bull. Thinking it is a ship in trouble, the keeper called together a lifeboat crew and launched their boat into the icy waters, heading for the Roaring Bull. But as they approached the vessel in distress, they saw an ancient galleon with tattered sails. Its decks were piled high with treasure chests spilling over with gold. Astride the deck is a solitary man in black. The evil pirate grinned wickedly down at them, gesturing grandly with his cutlass. As the breakers overwhelmed their boat, the last thing the keeper and the rescuers heard was the sound of Black Bartelmy's ghost, laughing. They say that the ghost of Black Bartelmy continues to haunt the Cape and the Roaring Bull to this day, and that any rescue crew summoned to save a vessel off the Roaring Bull should take every precaution, because the distressed vessel might not really be there. By far the most feared and recognized sea creature, the Kraken. The Kraken is one of the most terrifying creatures of Norse mythology, a legendary sea monster that lurks in the deep waters of the North Atlantic Ocean. The Kraken has been described as a huge squid or octopus with tentacles that can reach more than a mile long and eyes the size of dinner plates. The Kraken can attack ships, drag them down to the depths, and devour the sailors as its prey. The origin of the Kraken legend can be traced back to the 12th century, when the king of Norway, King Sverre, wrote about a monstrous beast that he encountered in his voyage. Later, in the 13th century, the Kraken appeared in some of the earliest Norse sagas, such as the Orvar Odr, where the hero Odr fights the beast and escapes with his life. The Kraken was also mentioned by naturalists and explorers, who tried to explain its existence and characteristics. The Kraken has been compared to other sea monsters from different mythologies, such as the Greek Scylla and Charybdis, who also threatened sailors and ships. However, the Kraken has a unique place in the Scandinavian folklore, as it represents the power and mystery of the ocean. The Kraken was also believed to have a connection to the god of the sea, Loki, who was known for his mischief and trickery. Unlike gods or spirits, the Kraken wasn't worshipped in a religious sense. However, its legend lived on in sailors' tales, warnings passed down through generations, and regional folklore. People didn't seek favor from the Kraken, they feared it. But this fear gave the Kraken a powerful legacy. It became part of the mythological framework that explained natural phenomena, like sudden shipwrecks, missing vessels, or strange currents at sea. You may be wondering, does the Kraken still exist? Or has a Kraken ever been found? While there's no concrete evidence of a creature as large as the legendary Kraken, real-life giant squids, once thought to be myths themselves, have been discovered in the deep ocean, feeding speculation that the Kraken myth may have some basis in reality. This is your trigger warning. Before we discuss this next one, please allow me to inform you that this next portion might trigger some as it discusses the passing of babies, apologies to whom this may affect personally. Which do you believe, simple Irish lore or are they real? When the word fairy is mentioned, many think of gentle beings with nothing but pleasantries for their human counterparts. Changelings were fairies who had been left in place of a human child or baby who had been stolen by the fairies. The child was taken for one of three reasons: to act as a servant, for the fairies to receive the love of a human child, or for malice/revenge. Most of the time, the exchange was made with a fairy change, but occasionally an elderly fairy would be swapped, either so that it could live out its life in the comfort of the cars of a human, or so that it could die. Usually, it was the fairest, most beautiful children who were taken, because the fairies craved and admired these traits. Often a baby might become ill, or take on a strange appearance, or a person might be left unable to move their limbs, fairy-struck, as they called it, and the local people would begin to suspect fairy work. In medieval times, children with deformities, illnesses, or conditions that were unexplained at the time were thought to have been replaced by changelings, which is why many were abandoned or even killed. But there were those who suspected their baby had been swapped with a changeling who still felt as if they had to look after and love their changeling child, for fear that the fairies would harm their stolen child, or worse, never bring it back. Belief in changelings endured in parts of Ireland until as late as 1895, when Bridget Cleary was killed by her husband who believed her to be a changeling. Some believe that the origin of the changeling myth stems from a very dark corner of the mind. Changeling tales illustrate an aspect of family survival in pre-industrial Europe. A peasant family's subsistence frequently depended upon the productive labor of each member, and it was difficult to provide for a person who was a permanent drain on the family's scarce resources. If a family felt unable to care for a child, particularly one who they felt would be no use to them in the future, due to an undiagnosed condition or a deformity, it was easier for them to lose child believing that they had been taken by a gang of fairies, than it was to believe they were going to let their child die. Infanticide was a horrible yet very real aspect of rural living in the medieval world, and the fact that changeling tales so often mention their ravenous appetite suggests the parents of these unfortunate children saw them as a threat to their family's continued existence, and that allowing them to die might be the only way to save everyone else. The changeling stories just helped them down the horribly inevitable path.
And so, our descent comes to a pause. But remember, the crypt holds secrets yet unspoken, a forgotten chronicle awaits, one that will twist our understanding of history even further. I am the Decay Echo, and until our next journey, let the whispers of the past guide you deeper into the shadows.